If you're someone who is trying to get back into reading or get into reading for the first time, one of the best pieces of advice I can give is to read multiple books at once. Let me explain. There are two main reasons I would suggest this. One is that you will likely feel more like reading and read more if you don't limit yourself to one book or one kind of book. Two is that it will help fight back against dopamine addiction and help you think better. I'll start with explaining the second reason first. I can't speak for everyone, but I think the biggest controllable thing that interferes with reading more for most people is the internet, especially social media. It's wasting time that could be better used by something, like reading. More importantly, I'd say that it's training your brain to make it more difficult to read or do other tasks that require concentration and deep thinking. Even if you're trying to read information on the internet, it's so easy to skim an article or go to another article if it's not quite interesting enough. This can very negatively impact your concentration, so you can't read for long without getting bored. You could say that social media is like junk food for your concentration, while reading is like a nourishing, healthy meal for your concentration. So if you want to read more, especially if your main nemesis is addiction to the internet or social media, reading multiple books will help you read more without getting bored as quickly. Hopefully, it will eventually break or at least lessen the urge to be constantly online. It's using novelty in the variety of books to compete against this addiction. That way you'll do something productive where you feel like you've actually accomplished something. Now, back to the first reason I gave to read multiple books at once. You can find books that suit your mood for reading in the moment. You might feel like reading, but not reading a specific book or genre. For me, I've always read both fiction and nonfiction at the same time. So I would recommend reading at least one fiction book and nonfiction book. But even within that, I would recommend reading multiple fiction and or nonfiction books at the same time. Now, I would recommend picking different genres or fairly different books within genres. For instance, I will only listen to one mystery book at a time because I would worry about getting them confused. But I might read or listen to two different children's books at the same time if they were different enough from each other. It's nice to read multiple different kinds of other fiction books too. Sometimes I want the more poetic language of classic literature. Other times I want the more easy to understand language of contemporary literature. Even in one nonfiction genre, I'll read multiple different books that are different enough from each other. For instance, history is in my top 2 nonfiction genres, and I'll read multiple different history books at once. If you're reading history books about different places and eras, that works because you probably won't get the information confused. Also, there are different kinds of history books when it comes to how they're written. So if you have a nonfiction genre that you really like, I would suggest reading multiple different books from within that genre. This is especially true if you're the kind of person who likes to learn something new every day. So that's why I would suggest reading multiple books at once. Let me also add that I count audiobooks as reading. I've made a couple of previous videos on the positives of audiobooks. If you're a person who already reads a lot and only likes to read one book at a time, that's completely fine. But reading multiple books at once can be a great thing to do, especially for new readers. Feel free to share in the comments any tips you have for reading more. And until next time, try to read more.